Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, on this program today, Herman Cain and his problems, but first, a texting ban, Marcellus Shale, and redistricting, Pennsylvania politics and government, in depth and in detail. And guess what? It all starts right now.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. We're going to get right to it. We have Amy Worden from the Philadelphia Inquirer and Brad Bumsted from the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review. I almost forgot Brad. I can't do that. All right, look, the legislature was up to all sorts of things. One of the big things, Amy Worden, I'm not allowed to get on here and text while I'm driving. What happened there?
Right. No more texting and driving, Terry, in Pennsylvania. Finally, after years of batting this one back and forth, both the House and the Senate agreed on a texting ban and have sent the bill now to the governor for his signature. He's expected to sign it. The issue that held this up for a long time is whether or not texting was going to be a primary offense or a secondary offense. That is, could police officers pull you over solely for texting?
Now they can.
Now they can. Yes, correct. But there are problems with it. Now a number of police officers, leaders in the law enforcement community have come out and said, we're not going to know whether somebody's actually texting or whether they're on the phone because we do not yet have a handheld cell phone ban.
So I can hold this up and talk, and I could actually be moving my fingers, and they'd think I'd be on the phone, right?
Right. How are they to distinguish that?
But no cell phone ban. That they couldn't agree on that.
Right. Not yet. Not yet. They say it's coming.
Primary offense. What's the fine? $50.
Yeah,
Is it $50?
$50.
Yeah, and it's you know, as this bill was sent by the Senate to the governor, Senator Jim Furlow said, "OMG!" Like it's taking this long. Oh my God!
Oh my God! Okay.
But it's.
Go ahead.
Well, the point is, I think that most people who text while they drive, not that I know firsthand, hold it down here anyway.
Yeah.
So how are you going to see it?
I don't know. 120 days, I think, is that when the law takes into effect?
Right, yes.
So, okay, no texting even if, well, you can't get caught, right? All right, I want to turn, Marcellus Shale finally starting to move. Explain what goes on with it. It's been, you know, Amy mentioned how long have we been debating Marcellus Shale. Go ahead.
Well, starting back in the beginning of the year, Republican Governor Tom Corbett said he's not going to approve any tax increases. He could not do a tax on Marcellus Shale, so it had to be an impact fee. Some people say there's no difference between a fee and a tax. But in any case, the Senate was prepared to do this in June. Corbett said, no, hold off. We want to see what the report is from my Marcellus Shale Commission. He got the report, but still it was stalled. Only this past week did the House begin to move a bill, and it reflects what Corbett wants in legislation, and that is an optional impact fee for local governments, but a statewide zoning standard that preempts local ordinances. Both are problematic as this is going to be negotiated in the Senate. I spoke with Senate President Pro Tem Joe Scarnati, and he said, you know, it's tough, you know, trying to find the sweet spot that everybody will agree on.
You know, Amy, one of the differences here is now the local, under the bill that moved in the House, was at a House committee this week,
Correct.
Getting it ready for a vote in the full House. We can get into the process too much, but if I understand this, now the state, in a sense, would preempt local authorities from making important decisions about Marcellus Shale. Is that right?
Right. Well, and here's what I don't get yet. Nobody has given me a good explanation about it. On the one hand, Corbett's saying we want to let the counties decide how much their fee should be within certain parameters.
Right.
But at the same time, he's saying to local municipalities, you can't say where, when, how these drillers can operate.
And it does seem to be a disconnect, doesn't it?
Well, people say he's been criticized for that just within the past day or two, that's inconsistent from a Republican philosophy of letting local government do it. But in terms of the preemption, that's something that's going to be very difficult in a state where the legislature has long revered local government's right to make decisions. A lot of Democrats would not want to do that.
And we're going to run to a break, but in a state with 2,500 municipalities that are all going to want to have a say in this, right?
And the issue of uniformity, which is something that again, the governor has made a big deal about. There's not going to be anything uniform.
Well, it's my understanding that that's the number one want at this point of industry.
Oh,
That they're
okay. The
saying,
industry
okay, go
wants it.
ahead and
I
do a
get it.
fee. We don't care. We don't care how
Right.
much it is, really.
it.
But we got to have some uniformity.
Be consistent.
Yes.
Be confusing out there. All right, redistricting, what's that all about? State House and State Senate seats. A preliminary plan was adopted. Some of those districts look a little strange. What's that about? We'll tell you after the break.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by ReconnectPA.org, supporting a comprehensive transportation funding solution, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program with Amy Worden and Brad Bumsted, journalists, both, all, whatever. Brad, let's talk a little bit about this redistricting. The preliminary plan is now, we're only talking about State House and State Senate as huge implications politically as well as governmentally for the state. Give us the overview.
Once every 10 years, the state legislature has to do reapportionment to carve up its own seats. And that's based on population changes that occurred in the U.S. Census. So now they're looking at the 2010 census, and what it showed essentially is that the western part of the state lost population, that population shifted east to Allentown, to York, to Monroe County. So as a result, the plan, preliminary plan that was approved this week, shifts House seats from the Pittsburgh area to the east. And the commission that is doing this is comprised of legislative leaders and a retired judge. He is a Republican, former Superior Court Judge Stephen McEwen, and a Republican plan was approved, and it is largely Democratic seats that are being moved, and the people on the commission say that's because that's where the loss was.
Right.
There is one Republican up in Erie
Right.
whose seat is going to be moved.
Right. Amy, let's talk. I mean, one of the seats is coming out of Philadelphia, and we'll go to York. Brad mentioned earlier a Republican seat in York. That almost, or in Philly, that almost seems like an anomaly, given how heavily. Go ahead.
Right. Well, it is. It was, and it is. That would be Dennis O'Brien's
Dennis
seat.
O'Brien.
And he was one of two remaining Republicans in the city of Philadelphia. So now that will leave the city of Philadelphia with one Republican.
One Republican. And that
lawmaker.
seat's going where?
That seat is going to York, to northern York County, where there's been a lot of development. What's interesting about that is more of the makeup of the southeastern
Right.
Pennsylvania delegation now. The southeast is winning a seat in Chester County, the Downingtown-Coatesville area, a high-growth area.
And one, I think, will go to Berks County, too, right?
And Berks
Yes.
County,
So
yeah.
we've got, so the power is, your point, the power shifting?
Well, what's interesting in the Philadelphia suburbs is that, and I suppose this is where politics come in, is the demographic changes within Delaware County specifically, and some of the inner ring suburbs, which have been long held by Republicans, are now shifting Democratic. And Delaware County is central to a lot of this carve up, where you have districts that were represented by two lawmakers in the House, now represented by three.
Right.
And there's some contention that you're segregating, protecting Democrats and also protecting Republicans at the same time.
So, Brad, what we basically have always had is, number one, incumbent protection, and Democrats are howling because they think that this process was set up to benefit Republicans in the process, as you point out, because the third vote of the 5 was a Republican, and that they split up districts in a way to help more Republican incumbents than Democrats. So I got that basically right.
Right. The Democrats say this is to institutionalize the Republican majority in Harrisburg. And guess what? It probably is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's based on actual numbers, but it's a political process. Senate Majority Leader Pileggi said at the very beginning of the year in an interview, this is a political process.
Right.
And that there's no question about it.
Now,
and that's what, it's a result of what the voters did last November. They put these Republican
Sure.
majorities in place.
go ahead, Amy.
Nothing more questionable than the district that was created for Senator Paccola.
Paccola, right. So there was one Senate seat moved from the western part of the state to the eastern part of the state, and that will go up in Monroe County. But in addition to that, they're redrawing the boundary lines, and Senator Piccola, who represents, is it the 15th Senate District? Go ahead, finish your point.
Yeah, the 15th has taken completely new shape. Some are calling it a horseshoe. Some say it resembles the original gerrymander,
Yeah.
which going back to ancient times, represented a salamander.
Right.
So it actually, Piccola's district now wraps clear around Harrisburg. They have removed Harrisburg from his district.
That's Harrisburg, the city. Go
Right,
ahead.
the city of Harrisburg. now takes in 5 counties and wraps around over a river, over 2 mountains, and into York County.
And after he led the charge for the state takeover of Harrisburg, which would not exactly increase his popularity in the
So
city.
before I let you go, one final word. We still have to do the congressional seats, which is done in the form of a bill which will move through the legislature. There's no time frame maybe except to meet the primary deadlines. Do you have any sense they'll do this before they leave for the holidays?
Meaning the Christmas holiday.
Yeah, not Thanksgiving. We know that won't happen. No?
I'm not so
Maybe?
sure. I think it could overlap into
January?
The last week of December into
okay.
January,
I got it.
possibly.
All right, you get the final word. All right, how's Herman Cain doing? Well, we're going to find out. We have a couple of experts who follow presidential elections pretty carefully to come in here and help us out. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. We're going to shift gears to the presidential election. Our two go-to guys on conversing about it up through the November election, Berwood Yost, my friend and colleague at F&M, Center for Opinion Research head, and Jim Hoefler, he's a political science professor at Dickinson. Jim, I got to start with you. Herman Cain, you know, apparently doesn't quite get the story straight about these sexual harassment charges, what he knows about them, what he doesn't. As we tape this, there's a third person. And, you know, we have Jennifer Flowers in the past. We have, well, of course, that was a little different. Catherine Willey with the president, that was sexual harassment in office. What's going on here? Can he sustain? Give us your take on this.
Well, it really calls to question whether he's serious as a candidate, because he really wasn't prepared for this. And it's not so much the allegation as his response to it. Yeah. I mean, he's a people person, and he responds with this sort of combative petulance that's not going to serve him well on the presidential stage.
Yeah. Berwood, I mean, look, this is odd because it's hard to defend what you really, you know, as you point out, what the allegations are, but 3 people? I mean, this is going, and look what is going on. Now he brings Perry into it. It seems like the whole debate is no longer about President Obama, right? Which is what they want it to be
well,
about.
I think the point that needs to be made about this is it's going to hurt Cain if it goes against type, if his response goes against type. And I think Jim and I were having this conversation earlier. Herman Cain was a businessman, practical, not a politician, a problem solver. You know, had all these attributes of personable kind of guy. Right. His response to this has gone against some of those things. Yeah. He looks petulant, as Jim says. He looks like a politician in the way he's dissembled with some of his answers.
I get your point.
Yeah, I think that's the bigger point. Does he go against type? And that's when it hurts him. And I think this issue is sustained because of the way he's responding.
One other point about this, Jim. I mean, the conventional wisdom, I thought, was you got a problem, you got to get it over with quickly and say yes or no and then get it out, like Clinton did. You know, he went on 60 Minutes with Hillary Clinton and, you know, I'll stand by my man, blah, blah, blah. The point here is that it's drip, drip, drip. And that does it matter how quickly this ends and how it ends? As to his candidate, right now he doesn't seem to be suffering yet at the polls. Something I want to talk to Berwood about in a minute. Go ahead.
Well, it's really early to tell, but again, when he runs against type, and by the way, it doesn't. In some respects, that's his brand, and it's really important if he can't maintain that
That's
brand.
a great point.
That
you
very
guys have made a great point here.
yeah.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot. Does he sustain this? Can he hang in there, or don't we? Or is there too much we don't know?
I
knew I was going to do this to you guys.
I think he's going to stay in a race. I don't think this will sink his candidacy. I think it really erodes his potential
Berwood.
to win.
Yeah, I think it erodes his potential to win. But look, primaries are a tough thing to call. If we were at this point in the 2008 campaign, we'd be talking about Giuliani and Clinton, right? And we saw how that ended up. So there's a lot of time to go, a lot of activities to take place, votes to be had. So
My big point about this is I think in the end it's still going to matter about what the specifics are in the allegation. You know, if in fact one woman wants to talk and she has to see if the restaurant association will allow her out, then we have this third woman says, and does it matter? And you think you're smiling because you think this is all window dressing? Go ahead.
No, I think it does matter, and certainly if it's very serious, it's got serious implications. My guess is it's somewhere in the gray middle, the truth, not unlike with Clarence Thomas. And so I think it's his response to it that really makes a difference.
All right, I want to run to a break. When we come back, I'm going to ask Berwood and then Jim. You know, we have poll out President Obama's at Franklin and Marshall College. President Obama's not doing well, yet he's still trouncing the other candidates. How can that be? And then we have a couple of things on the state issues, legislative issues I want to chat with these guys about. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Hi, welcome back to the program. We're talking about presidential politics with Berwood, Yost, and Jim Hoefler, political scientists. Berwood, let me, this week, Franklin and Marshall College, you can talk about this. We released a poll. It showed President Obama's job performance and, should there be time for change. Not very good, but yet he's trouncing the Republican candidates. Is it because it's early, it's unsettled? Shouldn't Pennsylvania be a little more competitive given the president's weak
I wouldn't
polling
use
numbers?
the word trouncing if I were,
Well,
if I were
10
you.
points, okay.
Right, but look, the first thing that we know is that a lot of people aren't even paying attention
right.
to the race, and who the candidate he's going to run against is unsettled. If you look at the president's approval number and what we call the hard reelect, the number of people say he deserves reelection because he's done a good enough job, those numbers are very poor. It's like 40%. Right. It's higher among Democrats, of course, than Republicans, but those numbers are very bad and mean that he's going to have a really tough time getting reelected. You combine those numbers with, I think, some of the economic growth numbers that we'll see in 2012. I think he still is incredibly vulnerable and likely not to win. But, and here's the but, Republicans have to field a candidate who is appealing and broadly popular,
Right.
and they have some candidates that are and some that are less.
Yeah, do you agree with that?
Well, the good news for Obama is that he's trending upward, at least nationally.
Yes, he is.
That's
and
correct.
so,
A couple points up.
yeah, I mean, he's up into the mid, his
40s.
reelect numbers are up in the upper mid 40s. And so now those trends are all over the map, but, the last 6 or 7 weeks he's had a pretty good period.
But would you both agree? I mean, he's out with the jobs program. He's campaigner-in-chief right now.
Right.
He's got the mortgage, help out with the mortgages, help out with school loans. I don't think, would you agree that it's not arguable that's, I think the reason for this bounce, this little bit of a bounce he's gotten in the polls, the way in which he's now trying to orchestrate the presidential campaign?
He's certainly focusing on the issues that voters have told us time and again they want us to, want politicians to look at. So there's no doubt that the jobs, and I also think we don't have the everyday back and forth of that budget battle.
Right.
You know,
that people don't pay much attention to?
I think that
Yeah.
I think they're better off. Politicians are better off when they're kind of in the aren't noticed.
Yeah.
He also gets a little of the Gaddafi bounce, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's...
Well,
Right,
foreign
that
policy, yeah. I mean, in general, when you look at national polls, he does that. But let me, Berwood made this point, and I think, Pennsylvania be competitive again, depending on who the Republicans nominate? You agree with that?
Big if, but sure. There's no
Well,
reason
there's
to believe
always
it
a big
wouldn't.
if when we're talking, right?
Right.
No reason to believe that you won't see the same, and some added perhaps, but the same battleground states that you've seen in the past.
Yeah.
Ohio, through the Rust Belt, Ohio, Minnesota, down into Pennsylvania. Virginia will be competitive.
Yep.
And maybe North Carolina.
All right, before we go, Berwood, I want to come back to you and ask you a question about the state, the aspects of the state poll dealing with these big issues. We talked about, a couple of them with Brad and Amy earlier. What is it that if the voters had their druthers, as they say, what issue do you think they would most like to see the legislature deal with?
Well, I think anything that relates to jobs is going to be something that's appealing to them, and in fact, infrastructure is probably part of that. If we think about what the president's talking about nationally, infrastructure is a way to get jobs. When we asked the question about the 5 major legislative priorities for the fall, only one of them did a majority of Pennsylvanians believe is something the state should be addressing. It's one of the most important issues, and that's transportation funding.
Right.
And that all has to do with infrastructure and preparing Pennsylvania to be a place that can do business and create jobs.
But the other thing is, I mean, Jim, over the years there have been lots of polls about selling the liquor stores. It's popular. Doing a Marcellus Shale impact fee, that's popular. School choice, not so popular. But, they don't seem to have any intensity. I guess people can go through their lives. They may get on the roads, they say, uh-oh, this road isn't good and I'm worried about this bridge collapsing. But on the other hand, these other issues is it that they care more about the pocketbook issues now, as Berwood says?
Well, things are just so bad, it's hard to care one way or the other who runs your liquor store, really. When you're out of work, you've got friends out of work, you're worried about your own job, and the job you do drive to every day is on a really bad road. Pennsylvania has historically been, and it's a hard state to keep roads up, right, because of the freeze-thaw problems. But boy, that's one thing that they could do and get Tom Ridge did this, I think.
Yeah. We have about we're almost out of time. We have about 7,000 miles of roads that need a lot of work, and 25% of the bridges are structurally deficient.
Yeah.
But you think, Berwood, back to you, final word, transportation fund plan is the big thing.
As is something that, of the issues they're dealing with now, Pennsylvanians like to see them address that.
All right, thanks for coming in. We'll have you
Sure.
back as the campaign progresses, and thank you for watching Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.